I set off for India, though in Europe I had everything I was supposed to have. I had a good roof over my head, a family, friends, and good health, but I still wasn't happy. I'd even had a good education. I read philosophy and literature and gathered a store of facts, but answers of anything seemed to be slipping further away. So I left to find a holy person. I had heard of Mother Teresa. Some spoke of her as a living saint, but she was getting old now. I hoped I could reach her in time to see if she perhaps had something different to teach. As the train pulled into Calcutta, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. I was about to step into a place that had been called Hell on Earth. Calcutta is huge and overwhelming, like being in the middle of a storm. But caught in the din of bells and modern traffic, you occasionally see such sights as bring the storm to silence. I had expected to see poverty and rickshaws, men pulling men on vehicles that have long been abolished everywhere else. But I was struck by how Calcutta was also so unbelievably alive. As if the walls had been torn down, here you could be a witness to life being lived. 12 million people jostle through one of the most overcrowded and polluted patches of the earth. Its extremes shook me awake. I could understand why it was from these very streets that over 50 years ago, an unknown Sister Teresa first heard her call to serve the poorest of the poor. Mother Teresa made her home right in the middle of Calcutta, and in 1950 she founded her own order, the Missionaries of Charity. Today, the order has over 3,000 nuns working around the world who wear the Indian sari dress with 3 blue stripes that has become their symbol. Theirs was one of the barest chapels I had ever seen. There were no fans to keep off the heat, no benches to sit on. The only decorations were a statue of the Virgin Mary and Jesus. Mother Teresa's is one of the Catholic orders that takes its vow of poverty most strictly. The sisters have no possessions except for the saris which they wear and which they always wash themselves by hand. They want to live simply, like the poor who they serve. Every morning at 5 o'clock, Mother Teresa and her sisters gather for Mass in the Mother House Chapel. Volunteers who come from all over the world are welcome to join them. I was surprised by how easily I had been accepted as a volunteer. Mother Teresa wanted no university degrees. She asked only for 2 qualifications: willing hands to serve and a loving heart to love. Though I did not arrive nor leave a Catholic, I too developed the habit of coming to prayers, for I found that the silence helped me, like the sisters, to find the peace that would be necessary to face the day's work. After they have taken the Holy Communion, the missionaries of charity are ready to go out and fulfill their mission, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to take care of the sick, and give shelter to the homeless. Until she became too old, Mother Teresa herself would lead the way. The volunteers catch a bus to the various homes which the missionaries of charity have around Calcutta. To become a missionary of charity is not easy. It will take these novices almost 9 years of study and work before they earn the blue stripes. Then they will take the final vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and wholehearted free service to the poorest of the poor. Public transport takes them to the home for abandoned children, to the home for the mentally ill, to Terzani, where they run an entire community for lepers, and to Calcutta, the home for the dying. Most volunteers want to work in Mother Teresa's first home, the home for the dying. It is located on the corner of a Hindu temple. Mother Teresa calls it her first love. The worst cases from the Calcutta streets are brought here. They are men and women who are destitute, who have no family or friends to look after them, who find themselves alone and sick or starving along the pavements of the city, on the threshold of death. Mother Teresa wants to provide a place for them to die in dignity and peace. Most of the patients have been made ugly by wounds, or they are weak and emaciated. Many of them have TB, which is contagious. They have dysentery, skin diseases, malaria. They may even have AIDS. The first days I was in shock and terrified of becoming sick myself. One volunteer, Andy, had spent many years working here, and by watching his example, I too slowly gained courage.
This is the very first house of Mother Teresa. She started here in 1952, and this is, let's say, the seed. From here it spread out all over the world. She has now about 600 centers and houses in about 122 different countries on earth, and she's still opening more. But this is the beginning. Here she scrubbed the floor, she cleaned the wounds of the patients, she cared for them like we do now. The house has a beautiful name. It's called Nirmal Hriday, the House of Pure Heart, and it's open for homeless people. All these people, the patients, are homeless. We find them in the garbage dumps, in the railway station, on the platforms, and on the pavement. The people arrive here found by brothers, by sisters, by volunteers. Whichever patients God gives in our hands, we try to save their lives, and I think we are sometimes quite successful. A lot of people you see here came in dying condition, and they are walking now, and they're soon going out again.
When a new patient is brought in, his name, age and religion are taken down in an admission book. People of all religions are accepted, but it is important to know which they belong to, so that if they die, they can receive the appropriate funeral rites. This man was found lying on a pavement under a rag. He was partially paralyzed and hadn't eaten for days.
He's very malnourished. We can carry him to the toilet and give him some clothes.
I was asked to carry him to the bathroom so that he could be washed. We would also have to shave this man's hair and beard because they were crawling with lice. Mother Teresa's idea is to give these people who have been for so long completely neglected and unwanted the basic needs: a quiet, safe place to sleep, food and love. They must not die like animals on the street. We threw his old clothes away and gave him a fresh uniform. A bed is chosen for the patients depending on how serious their condition is. The worst cases are kept near the front so the sisters can keep a close eye on them. A blackboard above records that there has been 1 admission, 2 discharges and 1 death today.
But every day you receive new patients, old, funny ones, very suffering ones, small ones, children up to 10 years we had here. So in this way it is always new, but the old ones, those ones who stay since a couple of months already with us, many of them are quite funny, you know, from the street. We love them all very much. It's very easy to love these people.
When dawn breaks, a quarter of Calcutta's population wakes up in slums or on the pavements. You find entire families huddled together outside with no home at all. The patients that end up in Calcutta come from these streets. The men do hard manual labor, carrying heavy loads in the markets, or they're human horses, as rickshaw pullers are called. But the streets of Calcutta are also filled with festivals and activity. They are never depressing. Most of what we might see as terrible poverty is a simple life which is born with great smiles. It is not the poor that Mother Teresa tries to help, but the poorest of the poor. Slightly better off than the pavement dwellers are thousands of families who live in slums like this one. But there are many diseases to be had here, especially from the dirty water. For someone to end up destitute means that they have been unwanted, unloved. Nobody has cared for them during their lives, which is why they are now in Calcutta. So when they are here, the most important thing we can do for them, says Mother Teresa, is to give them that love and attention which they have always lacked. Every morning before we began work, a sister would say a few words to us to remind us of the meaning of what we were doing.
God's love that is poured into our hearts, we must share it with others. And we have many opportunities here all through the day to put this love of God into action. And we are privileged to be here to do this work. And it's a great blessing, and count it a blessing.
This point was often repeated. To serve the poor is not a sacrifice, it is a privilege. The volunteers received neither pay nor lodgings for the time they gave, yet to work here surprisingly gave us great joy. We were taught not to shy away from the sick, but to always come in direct contact with them, to touch them. Because it's not until you can see the look of satisfaction or need in a person's eyes that you can understand the reason for helping others. Around 20 volunteers devote themselves to the 100 or so patients in the male and female wards. Those too weak to feed themselves are given help, and it's a good chance to come to know them as individuals. The washing up is done in a rudimentary way, with a mixture of soap and ashes. No brushes or sponges, just a scrap of plastic in the hand. To do it in silence and concentration can be a form of meditation. Halfway through the day, volunteers take a short tea break in the sunshine. I would often sit with a Spanish volunteer who had arrived around the same time as I, and we would unburden the often disturbing experiences of the ward below. Many of the patients who are brought into the home have infections or wounds. For some of the more serious cases, a hospital would be necessary, but the hospitals of Calcutta are often too full or refuse to take the destitute. The sisters are trained in basic medical care and do what they can. The volunteers help out, giving simple massages. When this woman arrived 2 months ago, her leg was crawling with ants. This woman had maggots in the hole in her head, but now she is recovering, and like many people here, she will soon return to her life on the streets. Donations of medicines are received from foreign countries, and these help cure simple ailments that have become so serious only because outside they went untreated for so long. It is easier to cure wounds and starvation than the suffering which Mother Teresa believes is the worst in the world, to feel alone, unwanted, or unloved. These two women have recovered in Calcutta and are now getting ready to leave. Under the envious eyes of their fellow patients, they are given new clothes and a little bit of money. A sister leads them to the door from which they will return to their life on the streets. Most of the patients do get better, but ultimately, Calcutta is a home for the dying. 25,000 people have died here already, off the streets, on a clean bed, and in dignity. For sisters and volunteers, it is the most important task of all to sit with them, to hold their hands in their last moments and help them die in peace. The dead bodies are wrapped up in a clean white sheet and taken away in an ambulance. Since most of the patients are Hindus, they are carried to the cremation grounds on the banks of the river. Here, according to the rites of their own religion, they are burned to ashes. Frederick is taking a year out before beginning medical school in Denmark. Traveling through India, he came to Calcutta to spend a few weeks, but became so involved in the work that he has now been here for 6 months.
I don't get so personal with the patients. I don't think I have to get personal with them to give them my love. I try to give them all my love. I mean, they all get the same love, and I hope I think it's good. But it's like I don't make a difference, you know? I think that what I give them is enough. I don't think it has to be personal.
What the volunteers do for a few months, the sisters do for their entire lives. So the volunteers follow the example of the sisters, who in turn follow the example of Mother Teresa. Now Mother is 87 and spends much of her time in the Mother House Chapel. But when she was in her 30s, she walked alone through the streets of Calcutta, determined to really live out the message of the Gospels.
For us, Mother is definitely a saint. That is true. And she's completely, I think, an outstanding woman. And what we do is we just follow her philosophy, and I think we just stumble behind Mother. Mother is just going straight forward with her ideas, and we follow her, but not even, I cannot say even in her footsteps, we just stumble behind her. It's sometimes physically very hard work. But this is one saying of Mother Teresa. She told us once, if you want to come to work here, but not to labor, no need to stay. So I think this is a very, very important thing. She wants to give 110%, not just 80 and not 60, not even 100%. She wants 110%. She wants us to love and to give till it hurts.
The volunteers spend many hours a day doing manual labor. All the laundry in Calcutta is done by hand. Although well-meaning people have offered to donate washing machines, Mother Teresa has always refused them. She wants her homes to remain simple, with as little technology as possible. If you wash the dirty clothes of the poor yourself, it's a good lesson. It is humbling. The washed clothes are carried upstairs, where they are laid out on the rooftops to dry. By the end of the day, even without washing machines, the trousers of the patients are all neatly laid out. The work is always finished. After work, the volunteers return to the cheap guest houses on Sutter Street. Some of them come for only a few weeks, some for months or even years. Many of them are atheists, but all of them share a desire to learn from the work of this remarkable nun.
When I first, coincidentally or whatever, heard about Mother Teresa, I was very much fascinated at her spirituality, her sayings, her lifestyle seemed to be the answer for all my questions and my searching. So I kind of thought of leaving my high school. I was 17 at that time. Thought of leaving my high school before I had finished my exams and just go here and say goodbye to everything and just become an MC brother, Missionaries, charity brother. But I'd say I've become a bit more mature in my considerations. And well, I finished my high school because my mother told me to, and then I had to follow that. But still have the hope of becoming some kind of religious.
After many months in Calcutta, Jacob is sad to have to go back home. Like many volunteers before him, he is anxious that in Europe he will not be able to continue the simple life and the work that he learned to do here.
I came as a curious traveler in 1983 for the first time. And I stayed 7 days, and the second time 6 months, and then 4 years. And I'm here again since 2 years, and I'm gonna stay altogether for four years altogether. I've changed a lot. I was quite a spoiled fellow. I was a former computer manager and a banker with a good income, and I was a gambler, and I spent a lot of money. I wasted a lot of money. And I came first in '83 to see this place, and it touched me completely and changed my life. And now I just spent, I told you, more or less the last 8 years in this place, and I hope God grants me many, many more years here. And I live now very simple. I don't waste money anymore. And
you don't miss luxuries?
No, not at all, not at all. I actually enjoy to live very simple. It goes hand in hand with this kind of work. This is Kedar. He's a young man or a boy, we don't know. He could be 16 or 20, we don't know, but he's retarded. But we found him in cellar station. He came in dying condition. He was dying of diarrhea when he came. And look how fit he is now. Hey, Kedar. Tigachi. Tigachi. He feels well, he says. He's a very, very sweet one. I mean, just imagine, he was laying dying in the platform in the cellar station, no one cared. And now we built him up. He's still skinny, but let him eat well, and maybe in 2 or 3 months, he's just ready to go out again. Ah, Kedar. Hey, Tumade. Tumade, hey, Tumade, come on. Namaste. Hey, Tumade, Devena. Tuma? Ami. Okay. Tumade, na? Amina. Hey, Baba. Oh, that's a nice. You know, but I mean, I have 40 patients laying here, and each one has to receive some love and some attention and some... Mr. Kedar, yes, but he's an unusual sweet one, that I have to admit.
Calcutta initially seems like a hospital, but it is not. It is a spiritual place. It is amazing how much peace, how much joy even there is in a home where people are brought in to die every day. Mother Teresa was always available to volunteers seeking advice.
ask you some things because
Yes, ask me.
yeah, because we've been working in Calcutta for a long time now.
Very good.
Yes, and we're going back to Europe now.
What has Calcutta given to you?
What does it get? It's taught us how to love and
Very
to care
good.
for the
Thank
people.
God. Thank you.
Because here it's all physical suffering, like
Yeah.
they don't have enough to eat
Yeah.
and these things. But in Europe we have plenty of things. People have big houses and
They
cars.
suffer with loneliness, unwanted, unloved. This more spiritual suffering. We came together. That's why family that prays together stays together. And if we stay together, we love each other. God loves each other. I want you to make a beautiful family together.
One more
That's
question.
the gift of Calcutta to you.
Mother Teresa taught a lesson that is not found in schools and universities, perhaps the most difficult lesson of all, how to love. At a time when so much of our kindness can only be channeled through donations of money and government organizations, she reminded people of the value of physical touch between two human beings. This helped the needy and the giver equally. Mother Teresa did not direct her attention to large social problems, but showed the way to many how to care for the needs of the least individual. For those who experienced her work, it was like an awakening. She brought the emphasis of life from the head back down to the heart. It was that ability to love and open the doors of love in others that is perhaps the mark of a saint.